Hi, welcome to nature. Okay, so this time we are filming on my phone because we had a little technical difficulty with Clarice, our camera. But we're gonna be fixing it soon, I hope. Anyway, my phone's kind of good. Let's just hope the definition is good. We are outside again because apparently you guys like the outside vibe. And today I'm gonna be talking to you about the top 5 reasons why, if you are a fantasy reader, you should be reading the Expanse series. Now, the Expanse series is a saga of like space opera, sci-fi kind of books. There are 8 books so far, but 9 books in the series. Each book is about like 500-ish pages, and it is, space opera, sci-fi. Now, I am not really a sci-fi reader. I've been dipping my toes on it like very recently. It's not really my thing. But my best friend though loves sci-fi with all her heart. So every now and again she'll give me a few recommendations, and she gave me this recommendation for the Expanse series last year. So I read it and I loved it, and I'm gonna tell you why, if you're a fantasy reader like myself, you should be reading it too. Now, the reason number 1 is world building. You see, in the Expanse series, the basic gist of it is the following. In the future, about 2, maybe 300 years, they're not very specific about it. The world, like the humans have colonized Mars, and then Mars became its own thing, like its own state. And then there are people that like to make it livable in a place, or to give resources. They mine resources from the asteroid belt, and those people that live in the asteroid belts are belters. Now, they live in the void cities, what they're called, and then that means that those places are kind of like stations that are attached to some asteroids. And those people, they are almost biologically different. Well, they kind of are. They're like physiologically different, not because they're born in different, but mostly because the way that they live, and they live with no gravity, means that their bodies can't really sustain Earth or just gravity while living more anymore. Like, some people can't do it. There are some medical procedures that you can do to like amend that, but that's not very reliable. Now, that kind of world building, and I just gave you like the basics of the gist. It's something that attracts us as fantasy readers, right? Like, when you're reading fantasy, you want to like visit this new world. You want to know about the culture of it. You want to know about the politics of it. You want to know about the language, and language is also a really interesting thing. In this world, language has developed in a way that, because when people went to space, it's not like just a country colonized space. It's like lots of people colonized different places. So space is very meshed together. It's all very diverse, and they have developed this kind of language, kind of this patois of space. They have developed in a way where, because they're always in environment suits, like to go outside and do repairs and things outside in the void, they have developed communication that is mainly on their hands. So their language is based not only on vocal, like it's kind of like ASL mixed with English, mixed with like French and Hindu and Hindi, and like a bunch of languages all together. And it's very hard to understand for other people, the Earthers, or the dusters that they call. And that's the people that live in Mars. And that's something else that's really interesting about this world building, is that not only they have created, that there are 2 authors that are right on their pseudonym, not only they have created this place and the culture of the people, but they also created slurs, and how like people, the prejudice that they have against each other, and the slurs that they use, and all of that is built into the system, which makes it feel really real, especially because it is sci-fi, and that means that it is kind of like our world, only a little bit more expanded. So really cool. Now, number 2 is because it is epic. Like, the scale of this story, it doesn't seem like it in the beginning, but it is really quite epic. The story encompasses a lot. If you want to get an idea, like you're not sure if you want to really dip your toes in it, because 8 books. The ninth one is supposed to be coming out this year. I would recommend for you to watch the first season of the show. It's maybe 8 episodes long. It's on Amazon Prime, and it is really good. It's a great adaptation of the entire show, but just, it's usually better to read the book before you watch the show. I actually watched the show before, so there's nothing wrong with that. I think they adapted it to book 6 because it just came out, the season 5. It's a whole thing. So yeah, I would recommend you to watch that. Now, the epicness of it deals with the unknown. It's in the premise that somebody has found an alien artifact and they're trying to deal with that, and how humans deal with that. That means a lot, because the idea of meeting like the aliens or something that is alien messes with the political landscape of the situation, and how people behave, and that brings an epicness that's very interesting for everybody. It kind of reminds me of humans meeting Parshandy in the Stormlight Archive series. That relationship that brings like a larger skill to the story. Reason number 3 is the political intrigue in these books are just yes, and I'm gonna say it again, yes. Here's the thing, the political climate that you begin the books at is already very tense. It's like a armed peace, because Mars has like a lot of military power, but the Belters, they have a lot of people, and they have the power over the resources, even though they're not like an independent government, but they do have the OPA, which is like rebels, and it's a whole thing. So they have like control over the materials and a lot of the food too, because they have found ways to grow food in space. And there's also Earth, which has lots of people. Basically, there's just out of sheer force of people, even though their army is not really that good and it's now unified, but there's still bickering inside. And the fun thing about the politics in these books is that you get to see it from all angles. These books are divided between multiple POVs, and you're going to have POVs that repeat each other from each book because they're like the main characters, but some POVs are there to make sure that you understand what's happening at every side, and you have that nice feeling of like a converging of a story that always it gets that slow build that we all love in fantasy, right? Like you read The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, you have the slow build that just kind of converges at the end. If you read even something as classical as The Lord of the Rings, it does have the slow build that like converges at the end, and that's really interesting. Which brings me to point number 4. Characters. Both their development and their relationships are just amazing in the series. Now, the character in general and character depth is not something that's usually very prominent in sci-fi. That has been changing with modern sci-fi lately. At least I've been told. I don't read a lot of it, but it is one of the things that's very prevalent, particularly on modern fantasy, right? Like you want to know about, like I haven't even read The Poppy War, and I know that like the character development of the main character is important throughout the whole trilogy. I read Jade War and Jade City and Jade War very recently, and those entire books are basically about family dynamics and family growth and their personal growth as human beings, and all of that. It's like character studies are something that's really important in general for fantasy readers, at least here on BookTube. That is something that's very prevalent on the Expanse series. You get the found family trope, you get like relationships that are believable, both aggressive relationships and romantic relationships, friendships, all of them are very believable. When you get, even if you don't get a POV from a character, you understand who they are, and when they make a decision, you know where that's going. And sometimes I find myself just very angry. Like there's just one character, and sometimes she makes decisions, and I want to punch her in the face because it makes no sense, but I also understand her trauma, and I understand where she's coming from, and I'm like, okay, I get you, but why? And that's a feeling that I usually get from fantasy, right? Like you read Ven on Mistborn, and you understand like her insecurities, even though they can be annoying, sometimes they make sense. You read about Sazed, sometimes he can be annoying, but he also makes lots of sense. Amongst other characters that also have that dichotomy about them. Their relationships are not, I wouldn't say they're the basis of the story, but they're quite prominent. Characters also are allowed to have lots of flaws in this series, and their flaws sometimes are also their strengths, and I love that because quite often people themselves like have, you'll find somebody that's like really hardworking, but that's also their downfall because they're also a workaholic. So they're always working too much, and that can be a problem, even though if it's good that people work, right? Like work is good. And that kind of thing sometimes it's hard to find in books, particularly sci-fi books, but this one has it, and it's great. And you also get to see these characters for a very long time. I'm biased towards long series. I like them. I like to see character growth throughout a very long period of time, right? Like 8 books. And I think they're great. Even characters that you don't get to see throughout the entire series, they bring something to the table. You know, the use of POV in these books are amazing, amazing. The pacing of the books is very, I wouldn't say, it's very fluid because it is written by 2 people. So the chapters have about the same size. Sometimes it changes a tiny little bit, but they all have like about the same size, and that makes the book flow faster. And even POVs that you wouldn't care much about, that's not a problem because quite close and quite fast you're going to be into the next character. That makes the reading experience very smooth, very simple, and quite enjoyable. The fifth and last reason why you should be reading the Expanse series is the fight and the battle scenes. Now, that's usually not my favorite thing about just books in general. I won't pick up a book because the fighting is good. I do enjoy good fighting and I do enjoy good fight scenes, but it's not like the main reason why I would pick up a book. But particularly on sci-fi, that can be a problem because it's hard to conceptualize fights with like spaceships that are like massive and like they have PDCs and like bombs and antimatter things, and all of that can be a little bit hard to conceptualize once you're reading something, right? Like the TV show does a great job at making it visual for you, but once you're reading it could be like a problem. I could picture lots of like long battle scenes because it's shown by multiple POVs, because it has emotional stakes. Even the physical fighting, awesome, great. Even it doesn't happen as often, but it does happen. The weaponry that the authors have conceptualized for the future, prime, amazing. And I would recommend it for some people that like reading, like if you enjoy the kind of fighting that Stormlight has in the later books when there's like lots of people, even though there's like a large army and it's harder to imagine, but Sanderson does a great job in making it very cinematic for everybody. That's the kind of behavior that you see in this kind of writing. A bonus point is that the prose is not hard to understand at all. You don't have to be like, I study translation. I don't study physics or science in any capacity, and I still manage to understand it just fine. All the science is very well explained, and it does seem very plausible. Apparently, it's one of the best descriptions of zero gravity that there is in literature. Wouldn't be able to tell you, but apparently that's what people say. And I would recommend it for everybody that likes fantasy and wants to dip your toes in sci-fi, but is a little bit, hesitant to change genres. I loved it. I hope you do too. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment. As soon as the next book is out, I'm going to read it. I'm going to be doing like a series review, probably like book by book or something. I guess we'll see. And I see you all later.